The Bill Clark Show, presented by Dr. Pepper. And now, Coach Bill Clark.
Welcome into the Coach Bill Clark Show. Landrum Roberts, along with the Coach Bill Clark. Coach, I trust that you had a great 4th of July.
I really did. You know, we're sitting there on the lake with fireworks beside us and all that good stuff. So it was a really good time.
Did you practice safe firework, shooting, witnessing?
Etiquette.
Did you shoot any?
I did. Yeah.
did?
You know, of course, I was trying to explain that I really should be past this. You know, this is the younger generations, but I was involved, of course, grandkids and all that good stuff as we were preparing for the big fireworks. Some people said that maybe our fireworks were just as good as
Really?
Yeah, I'm kidding, but they were. I thought they were good.
You do it at the lake?
Yeah, didn't ride to the
So
lake.
we had the Dixie Whistlers. I grew up going to my grandparents, and they were on Lake Logan Martin.
Yeah.
And we'd go there, and you had the Dixie Whistlers, and those things go under the water, and they'd still make the little noise with the tracer. I don't know if they have those. I'm not up on my fireworks.
Yeah, it's they can be expensive. We've spent, especially when you bring the grandkids in with you.
As long as you're doing it safely, right?
Yeah,
Coach safely,
everything safely.
shoot fireworks safely.
That's right.
Do life safely.
The whole thing.
That's right. Speaking of fireworks, a lot of recruiting news, a lot of buzz around the state. Let's start. What's going on in Tuscaloosa? Kalen DeBoer.
Yeah.
The 5-stars, they just keep rolling in compared to last year. Not that it was a bad class, but a lot of hype and hoopla, well-deserved for Kalen DeBoer and that staff, what they've been able to put together. Obviously, you got to hang on to these guys through December, get them signed. But what have you witnessed as someone who's been a part of it from year 1 to year 2? Explain that to our audience.
Yeah, I think, and it just makes sense, just the comfort level of this is what we have to sell. This is what it's about. This is really what, that people just don't know, especially when you're coming from across the country. What is Alabama football look like? What is Auburn football? What is whoever? What are we selling? What things win for us, as we talk about traditions, playing time, NFL. Sounds like they've got a good handle on it right now. Of course, as I always say, recruiting time will tell, but they're just as far as from what we all see on the outside, what seems like they're doing well.
When you do that and going from year 1 to year 2, and yours was a different situation and you had multiple stops, but at UAB you had the shutdown. So that was a different deal. But year 1 to year 2, the emphasis you put on your staff, you know the land a little bit better. Of course, you grew up here in the state. You coached high school football. You had those relationships. You mentioned Kalen DeBoer coming from across the country. That familiarity, how important is that year 1 to year 2 and some of those relationships in that network?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, who do I count on? Who do I listen to? I always wanted that high school coach to be the backbone of what we did. And if we had the right relationship, now there were other people trying to have that same relationship. So, I mean, you had to understand that his job as a high school coach was to promote his kids. But if he knew we were going to take care of the kid, if he knew that we were going to do what we said, if he knew how we treated them, and that just always meant so much because that's how I wanted to be treated as a high school coach. So that's how we try to work at. Now we have other influences, right? We have the guy that trains them. We have the agent. We have these other influences on the outside looking in. Now, we've known this about Alabama with when Coach Saban was there. They are built to recruit well. The whole place gets it. And I think having Nick Saban sitting there, I mean, really on their dime saying, these are the things that work for us. I mean, you'd be crazy not to use that. And so I think obviously they're taking advantage of it, it seems.
You had a lot of hoopla, especially for the high profile prospects. Used to a 5-star, 4-star, you come in, you really want to wow them. In some programs, they would go out of their way to go the extra mile. Not that they didn't do it for all recruits that came through the door, but certainly those other guys you want to put extra emphasis. Is that as important now with NIL and some of these contracts?
I don't think so. I really don't. I think I would still do those things. I think the family, the team, the NFL, obviously, what is important to this kid. But I think, this pay. Now, if pay is equal, then we're going to go back to these other things. The history and some of that probably would creep in if they're all things are equal from a financial standpoint, which maybe with this house deal, that's created more parity in how they're paying, which then goes back to some of these other factors.
I'm curious with some of these guys, not necessarily in your past experience, but you still talk to coaches that are in big time programs. With some of these guys in the past, how much did they worry about a recruit maybe bringing them in, their family, and they put up the nines, they take them to the nice steakhouse, maybe doing something within the rules, but something they didn't do for a guy who was maybe a 3-star or 4-star. Do you worry about that? Because kids talk, prospects talk. You worry about that getting back to the family and saying, well, they didn't treat us that way.
Yeah, I think there was a consistent way you treated each one. I think the key to that is how much time has been put in on a kid. Now, the question is always, you discover a guy late, or he was committed to Texas and you're sitting at Alabama. Because what would happen for us, we would offer somebody and people trusted our offer. And all of a sudden they would just get, everybody in our league would offer them. Just because we offered them. They knew that we had spent the time. They knew how we evaluated. And I think there's always that factor. But I think the key to me, you're trying to treat them all at this high level. And, like we said with Alabama, their history of recruiting like they have, all those top classes, there's a blueprint there, of how to recruit. Sounds like they're following it pretty well.
Interesting comments from Arizona State head coach Kenny Dillingham the other day at Big 12 Media Day, when he said, now with the House settlement, and I'm paraphrasing here, but we're still a little bit in limbo. We're operating in a gray area. We don't really know the rules. How inherently tough is that? I know that you have compliance there, but is compliance fully well versed on what's going on and what they can and can't do right now?
No, they're not. I mean, it's crazy. And I'm literally hearing that from coaches that we still don't really know exactly where we are. I think I get this question asked every day about the history of how we got to this. And I've said, how many times we say on this show, and I know I'm probably beating this dead horse, but it was the fact that we kept saying, don't do it this way, don't do it this way, put up some guardrails. And then just to get to this mass free-for-all, it's going to take some time to pull that together. And I hate to say it, but there's no new litigation.
Right.
But I'm just praying that we, and I was talking to Coach Smart the other day, and it was like, could we just get to one window? That would be so good. Now, you guys up north want it at a certain time of year and, a little later and whatnot, because that's a benefit to them. But getting to one, I just still can't imagine you do all this work and you get these people committed and it's January, and then there's another portal after. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And it's just the insanity of that. And I know that kind of got off the money part of it, but I think there's still a lot, to your point, a lot of gray areas still out there.
Yeah. And operating in that way, and correct me if I'm wrong and kind of going back down this road, but the NCAA, and they get criticized for kicking the can down the road and knowing that this was eventually going to come up. But I do defend the NCAA a little bit in saying that maybe they were so slow to act, or their hand was forced to act, because they knew what this was potentially going to open up and all the different cans of worms.
Yeah, I think this was such a litigation. They were just getting punched, but that was still their job. And I think what's sad is we really started talking about this like it was coming 3 years before. And I think if we'd have just tried to do anything on the front end, we would not be where we are today. And we did nothing. There was literally nothing done, and all of a sudden you had this free-for-all. So at least there has been a move to try and do something. So that part is good. I think if we can keep some guardrail, keep some guidelines that will stick, and we can get to one window, that would at least be a big help.
Ross Dellinger, he also reported that from multiple Big 12 coaches, and saying that there's still circumvention of the rules and people are still trying to get away with it. But basically that they've got kids that they're not going to be able to fulfill some of these promises, some of these offers, and they're straight up just either lying unintentionally, or they're telling things to kids that they just can't deliver on is not true. I would say that has kind of always been the case in some cases, in some instances with programs, but your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's been going on since time immemorial. Now there's a chance to see some of that. And there's probably truly some gray area of, I thought we had this money. Now you would think with the house settlement, you would get more clarity on that. We have this amount, we're going to spend this amount. I was at Auburn, this was after our fall show and then before the spring, and they were just in that process. What's a quarterback worth? What's a running back worth? And now you're starting to see some standards across that people are using. But, I know there's still money that's going on outside this, as we would say, dark money. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's still dark money.
Yeah.
So.
Since the beginning of time, there's been dark money.
Yeah, this hadn't changed it.
Right.
That's what's amazing, that these people are getting, these kids are getting this amount, and then somebody else is getting some money to somebody else in the family. The mom, the uncle, the whoever, on above and beyond this. So, which is crazy.
When it comes to roster management, when it comes to revenue sharing, all of these coaches, no matter the program, the level of football, they got to be smart with their money, and that's where our friends at SmartBank come in.
Yeah, I think just to that point, I was sitting in a meeting with SmartBank yesterday, board of directors meeting yesterday. Just hired a new financial advisor. And I think that's what's cool when we talk about you're able to go in a place that knows who you are, they care, and they've got all the pieces. That holistic approach to what you need, whether it's just simple checking or personal banking or financial advisors. Those guys do a really good job.
Okay, Coach, we've covered one side of the state, talking about the hot start that Kalen DeBoer and the Alabama Crimson Tide have had for their 2026 recruiting class. We'll go to the other side of the state, but if you'll permit me right now, I was just checking my USGA Gen app right now and checking up my updated handicap index. Did you ever have to worry about that as a coach, playing too much golf?
No, I was, we would go the regions and I would putt. I was kind of the designated putter. But I also had a back injury. So, I can't, no offense to the guys that play, but that wasn't my thing.
No, and we make light of it and have fun with it because they've certainly had fun with it in the media, and Hugh Freeze and the frequency of how much he has been playing golf, and then looking at the recruiting rankings, you lose a couple of 4 stars. Oh, yeah. Right now, as it stands today, you got 8 committed to the class officially. As we speak, On3's got them ranked, the Auburn Tigers, around 73. Long way to go.
Yeah.
But immediately you're going to start getting criticism, especially when you're coming off 2 really impressive classes that you were able to get, and then people thinking that Hugh Freeze is spending too much time on the golf course. I just want to get your thoughts, kind of wade us through the, this is nonsense, or maybe there's something to it.
I think it's both. I know it sounds crazy, but I think the rankings are something that, and there's a lot of arbitrary mess in there that I don't like, but recruiting at that level is nonstop. It is the game. It's just never ending. And so you got to look at that and say that's worrisome as a head coach. Now, I may feel like we got some people in there nobody knows about that are better than they think, and but we know the players equal the results. We know that. And so that's something as a coach you got to look at. Now, going to play golf, whether you go to the lake, you go play golf, I think that's all relative to getting your job done. Now, it's like I always said, and I was talking to a young man last night who was coming door to door, and he's, coach, and they would, well, give me some advice, give me some lessons, give me some things. And I said, well, we come from this world of, my world is on Saturday, you're going to get judged. Good kids, act right, go to class, we're still going to get judged on Saturday. So that's what's going to be the final judge here, is what he did. Now, I will say this. I think when you go into a year like Coach Freeze is going into this year, there's probably a tendency to say we're going to put our time into the field. We're going to spend more time, but they've got so many people. They've got so many people off the field. They've got so many recruiting people. Money's not an object anymore. They got the same money Alabama's got. I know there's some Texases and Ohio State may have more, but they've got plenty of money. So I don't think it's that. I think they've got the people. So, I don't know. know that is part of the job at that level, nonstop recruiting, and you can't let up. I do think there may be some focusing on this year because it is so big for him.
The directives, though, given by the head coach, what does that look like? Because I heard a coach, I think it was Trooper Taylor, I'll give him credit for saying it, recruiting's like shaving. If you don't do it every day, it's going to show. What are the directives of the head coach? How are you coordinating with your staff? Who goes where? Who goes to see who?
Yeah, it's just nonstop all the time. I mean, and that's where the head coach has got to be involved, and you have recruiting coordinators, you have all these things. Now, if you've got really good offense and defensive coordinators, you then can get involved in those other things like recruiting more. You can focus on that because that's why you've got an offense coordinator and defense coordinator that still have your hands on it. But really, there's nothing as a head coach you're not involved with. And that's why it's never ending. I mean, it truly is never ending. And that's why a shelf life to me is entirely possible because you're going to have to give so much to this job. Now, once again, like I used Alabama, that part was rolling so well for them. They were winning so much. But what does somebody use against you? Hey, that's what was so amazing about those guys, that they were able to keep bringing in players as they were with guys in front of them that are NFL guy. Of course, different times now. But obviously Auburn's did a great job the last 2 years. Time will tell. But it is interesting that people are keeping up with how much he's on the golf course.
Well, and what's even more interesting, though, is his athletics director, John Cohen, even saying that he has played golf, apparently, with Hugh Freeze. I don't know if he said it, but they play a good bit together. So if you're going to be playing golf, always a rule of thumb is play with your boss.
That's right.
But maybe let him win.
That's right.
Give him the mulligan. But also something else that's been pointed out is not being able to promise anything until the beginning of August and not knowing exactly what that P&L or that budget sheet or whatever we're going to call it these days, what that looks like, and being able to fulfill anything that you promise to a kid. I know this is all kind of new for all of us, but what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's if that's a thing, the money and how much you got and what you're promising is a thing. So, I would think the athletic director would be in tune with that to be able to say, what is different with these other people? If that's you're saying he's kind of using that as a reason that they're maybe where they are right now.
Right.
And you say, well, what about these other people? What do they have that we don't have that allows them to do what they're doing? That's the only question you've always got where you say, okay, wait a second. What about the people we're playing? What does Alabama have? Why are they recruiting well and we're not? Once again, in a nebulous ranking system, and I think the whole deal and everybody in the world says, okay, 10, 15, 20, but 70, that's a big deal, especially when they've had a lot of success recently. I think it just opens up questions, but I think people are getting ready for football too.
Well, it wasn't a straight across the bow insinuation that other schools, and it was not from the league, but other schools, that they compete against recruiting wise, maybe we're not operating within those particular guidelines. That's been going on since the beginning of time.
I'm going to say this, and I think there are people that live for the gray. And what's gray now?
Again,
yeah.
If you don't know the rules, you're not clear.
Yeah.
Here's my thing, Coach. I'm all about doing it right and the morality, if you're going to come from that standpoint, and we're going to do it the right way. But if there are 133 other schools operating in the gray area, I'm probably going to operate in the same gray area.
Right. And that's, I guess, my point. Now, we know there were cut and dry things before. Now you can pay them.
Yeah.
So I don't know as much about what the gray is. I'm sure there are things now you've got access to just more money because of the school you're at. They have a TV deal on the side, Longhorn Network, whatever that is. That's the problem we have here when I'm compared to those people, and we just cannot make. But look below them. Look at the non-Power Four, what they're dealing with. Where they've got these people up here that can just go grab their guys, and I am hearing more people getting called out for for the truly calling them, having people call when they're not even in the portal.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that makes me sick.
And hearing about it, that it's not even secondary or off the field people.
Right.
I'm talking about on the field assistants.
Oh, I've been saying this since I said, this is and this is the worst thing there is, because now you're messing with kids' minds. You're messing with their minds. You're creating the worst things, that's just downright cheating.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the one thing. You got money, they can get in the portal, but I'm just going to go pick the phone up and call this guy who's not in the portal. I mean, that's what disgusts me, and that's what we've set up.
So for Hugh Freeze, and kind of circling back to Auburn, the on-the-field product, if you don't win in year 3 with the roster that you've already retained, the guys that you've already brought in, there's a lot of expectations there. What that number looks like, wins and losses, I don't know. It needs to be better than it's been in year 1 and year 2. So the focus on the field it's got to be the emphasis that you're putting right now, but trying to balance that and still maintaining that recruiting edge. That's got to be tough.
Yeah, it doesn't end. It just never ends. It just doesn't end. And at that level, that's what it is constantly. And that's the part when you go, okay, I need a break, and there is no break. And you want to talk about the difference in college coaching and NFL coaching, they get a break. These guys don't. But it's just that's the world you're in. And if you don't like recruiting, if you get tired of it, it's going to show up, and you're going to lose for it.
Yeah,
and you are going to get judged on that.
Yeah, you almost need a watchdog to look after those big stacks of money that all of these college programs are keeping wrong.
Yeah, I mean that's what it is now.
Well, we've got our friends at Global Canine Protection Group. Gage, if you're watching, and I know that you watch every single week. Met you at the Braves game. Wish they were playing better, but you did your job.
He did, and we love our guys at Global Canine Protection. Let me say that 2 or 3 times fast. But cool thing about them, those guys are, smelling out guns and bombs, but they're at airports, they're at games.
A lot of these guys, not just guys playing football in these programs, not just these coaches, but our great listeners, our great viewers that watch this program. Everybody wants a new ride, and I know just the place that they can get one.
I know, and I was on the phone with the owner of Donahue, Chris Donahue, the other day, and things are going well. Obviously with all their Chevy vehicles. Let's talk. I'm actually going to read. I broke the glasses out.
Love it.
Trucks and Equinoxes are our main pushes. Equinox with lease payment. They have a large number of commercial vehicles. Silverado 1500 up to 10K. Customs are cheap. As he said, stupid cheap. That's a new one. Silverado 2500 up to 10K off. Silverado 3500 CC up to 10K off. Equinox, the ICE 4K off and 5K off of demos. And lastly, Equinox EV leases start at $389.
Stupid cheap. That is always a phrase that gets Landry Roberts' attention.
That's right.
Buddy,
Stupid
I got
cheap.
a deal for you, and it is stupid cheap.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. Right. Donahue Auto and Donahue Chevrolet, they're in Fort Payne. They do a wonderful job.
They really do. Great folks.
All right, Coach, as we put a bow on recruiting so far, and there's still a long way to go, we do have SEC Media Days coming up in Atlanta, something we're going to be a part of. Take us back to your Conference USA Media Day. I can only guess you never wanted to give them too much ammunition. You wanted to maybe pour mouth your team just a little bit. What was Coach Bill Clark's strategy at Media Day?
It was interesting from when you had not been picked to win to you're the favorite. I mean, and so having lived all those phases, it's very interesting. Your kids are going to see this. Your fans are going to see it. You want to be positive. And I'm telling you, people don't really understand that you don't know. You don't know college because you're not even playing a fall jamboree. There's not a spring game to play where you could go, okay, we got a chance to be pretty good. Or now you're seeing, but I'm telling you, there's a lot of unknown still. I do think that how you present yourself is important. I think recognizing your guys, especially as you're trying to push a certain position, a battle, competition. I think those things that you keep talking about, like, jobs are open, or we're still competing, we're still trying to find the number 2 at this. I mean, you're talking to your own players as much as you are the fans, and then of course you're never wanting to give something away or give something. So it's a balancing act.
For you, would you ever get butterflies? Because I know in that position, you're talking to a lot of different groups, whether it's a civic group, whether it's a booster club, your own people. But in a setting like that, you still get a little bit queasy?
You know, I think it's one of those things you just learn how to be good at.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I'm going to be a public speaker. And so you just create a way to, the people that are good at it, and who knows who was good at what, but I think you create in your own mind, and a lot of it is knowledge. This is how we're going to talk. This is how I would want to be talked to if I was a fan, if I was a player. So I really tried to think a lot about that before I went out there, not just speak off the cuff. But I didn't want to be a robot, where I'm scared to say anything. But it's, these people that just will say anything, and there are those, they always seem to get themselves in trouble.
God rest his soul. And one of my favorite approaches ever at past SEC Media Days, and it was the one here, and it was Mike Leach.
Oh, yeah.
Mike Leach, he had the one sentence, and then he opened it up for questions.
Yeah.
And basically, he the conference, they told him, you're supposed to say this much, talk for at least this long, include these things.
Yeah.
Mike Leach said, no, that's fine. Here's my statement.
Yeah.
Then you have the Eli Drinkwitz. And Eli Drinkwitz just a couple of years ago, a 12-minute filibuster where there was nothing left.
Yeah.
By the end of it, you really don't know what he said, but that was the point. He didn't want to allow for some of those questions. What's the approach for some of these guys now where there's so many unknowns? They're going to get a lot of NIL questions. They're going to get a lot of budget, house settlement questions. How are they handling that? Because even for a guy like Kirby Smart, it's got to be new.
Yeah, I think to the Drinkwitz point, that was kind of my thought, was not necessarily the filibuster, but that I had a plan.
Right.
I knew how I was going to talk about each position. I knew what that looked like. I knew my guys were listening. I knew opponents were listening. I knew seeds I wanted to plant. And I think that's the key is to be prepared. Like I said, not robotic. And then you just got to be yourself. I think that's the key to the whole deal. Just be yourself. And if you do that, you're going to be fine.
Let's cut through the kudzu, so to speak, though. Every coach, when we hear them in Atlanta, they're going to feel really good about their team.
That's it.
They're going to feel good about their team. They're going to be optimistic. How many of those coaches are probably feeling bad about their team, but they got to go out there and they got to sell it for old school you? Or maybe they're just optimistic and they're hoping that it's going to happen.
It's all. I would always wonder that myself. Because I'm telling you, the time between the last game and the first game,
because we can't all be good.
That's right. You're like a different person,
right?
And it is. It's like I always said, August 1, you might as well be sending to Afghanistan without the bullets. I mean, you were there until January. I mean, that's how much work you're about to put in. So I think hope and optimism, all that stuff's good, but you also got, how good is my opponents?
For sure. SEC Media Days, we'll have a lot to talk about that.
Look forward to it.
On the following episode, and just so much. It's almost here, Coach.
It is, and I will say one thing. August 26th, we got we mentioned this last time, Tommy Tuberville, Paul Feinbaum. I'll be up there with them. We're going to have a great show. It's going to be at Vestavia. We're going to put all that out. In fact, it comes out tomorrow, so you're going to start seeing about tables that can be bought. And, of course, all this goes to the Coach Safely Foundation.
Do you still call him Coach, or do you say Senator /
I say Coach.
Maybe future governor?
I think Coach is more important than Senator.
You know what? A lot of people would agree with you. All due respect
No
to
offense,
our great senators.
I am a coach, though.
And politicians out there. Well, Coach, we always appreciate our friends at Buffalo Rock, and especially Dr. Pepper.
Yeah, Jimmy Lee and those guys at Buffalo Rock and Dr. Pepper, couldn't do it without them.
All right, Coach. It's been fun. It's almost here.
It's almost here.
The Coach Bill Clark Show. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Molly Robinson, for the Coach Bill Clark. I'm Landry Robertson, the vacationing Pat Smith. We'll see you next week.
This has been The Bill Clark Show, presented by Dr.